Angela Merkel has been German Chancellor for 12 years and is running for office for the 4th time. Ms. Merkel, we're delighted to have the chance to speak to you here at the Chancellor in Berlin, the German capital.
I'm pleased too. Welcome.
Hello, Madam Chancellor.
Almost the entire world knows your face and your name. In these uncertain times of terror and war and collapsing alliances, many people are afraid of the future and place great expectations in you. People often ask us what you are actually afraid of.
I don't think fear is a good advisor. We must face our challenges head-on, and we face huge tasks. Then we can consider what to do. In my experience, when the world works together, we can move mountains. When everyone has different opinions, it can take a really long time to reach a solution at all. But we negotiate, talk, and find one.
Is there anything that keeps you from sleeping at night?
Well, there are situations to which I have to devote a lot of thought, such as now when I think about the question of Ukraine and Russia, when I think about the Syrian civil war, which has robbed so many millions of their homes, or when I think about the nuclear tests by the North Korean dictator. That naturally worries me too. But rather than fearing these problems, I consider how I can solve them.
Ms. Merkel, you have been in office for 12 years. Doesn't an unlimited number of terms in office harm pluralism in society, and with that, democracy?
I don't think so. There are different systems. There are direct election systems where there are usually term limits, for example, the French and American presidential elections. In Germany, we elect parties, and you can't limit the number of terms for parties. And those parties then select their own top candidates, which is why the number of terms in office is not limited. So in Germany, for example, the number of terms of office is limited for the president, Germany's head of state, but not for the Chancellor.
So if I understand you correctly, you are opposed to limiting the period in office for a Chancellor to 2 terms, for example.
As we already said, you have been Chancellor for 12 years and have attended many UN General Assemblies. What do you think when you hear US President Donald Trump threatening North Korea with total destruction in the event of an attack?
I am against threats of this kind. And speaking for myself and the government, I must say that we consider any type of military solution absolutely inappropriate, and we are counting on diplomatic efforts. This must be vigorously implemented. In my opinion, sanctions and enforcing these sanctions are the right answer. But anything else with regard to North Korea, I think, is wrong. And that is why we clearly disagree with the US president.
Did you get to talk to him after his speech?
I haven't talked with him since then. I did speak with him before his speech a few days ago. I also made it clear during our phone conversation that a diplomatic solution needs to be found.
Are you offering to act as a mediator?
I made it clear that Germany is prepared to assume responsibility, alone or as part of the European Union. Even if this conflict is far away from Germany, it is one that also affects us. That is why I am prepared, as is the foreign minister, to assume responsibility here. We took part in negotiating the Iran agreement, which I think is good, and better than having no agreement at all. It took many years, but in the end, it did limit Iran's possibilities for nuclear armament. And I think we must take the same path, or a similar one, with Russia, with China, together with the US. Also in the case of North Korea.
So would you also ring Kim Jong-un?
That's not on the agenda now. I also do not intend to take steps which haven't been agreed upon. That would weaken the international community of states. But we can't just avoid taking responsibility either.
Ms. Merkel, staying with foreign policy, I understand, of course, that you have to speak to governments who do not necessarily correspond to the level of democracy we have here. But Egypt, for example, you signed a security agreement with Egypt. And according to Human Rights Watch, the Interior Ministry with whom you signed this agreement has itself been accused of using torture.
We talk with every country. Along with the agreements we sign with them, we also talk about things that bother us. With Egypt, for example, we've had long and in part very controversial discussions about our employees from political foundations. We talk about human rights abuses and situations that contravene the rule of law. Yet, on one hand, foreign policy is always about looking after our interests, and on the other, about safeguarding our values. And there are many reasons to help Egypt become a stable country, a country that enjoys reasonable economic development. So there are reasons for us to sign a joint agreement.
But it's also a country that restricts press freedom and suppresses the opposition. We, from DW, for example, are censored there.
As I've already stated, we know about this from political foundations, and now, for example, from you, from Deutsche Welle. And there we clearly tell President el-Sisi that we criticize that we don't think it's right. But not to talk to them because everything isn't just as we would wish it, or to say we won't negotiate at all with Egypt. I think that's the wrong approach, because Egypt needs our support, and through dialogue we can perhaps take small steps towards improvement.
A major issue that our international audience also associates you with is the refugee one. The central question there is always, how long can refugees stay in Germany? What is your plan there?
The protected status of refugees varies. On the one hand, we have refugees who have been granted the full status defined by the Convention on Refugees. They're initially allowed to stay here for 3 years. And if after 3 years the situation in their homeland hasn't improved, they can get permanent residency status. Then there are refugees with subsidiary protection status. There we look at the situation in their homeland on a yearly basis and decide accordingly. So it's dependent on their protected status. We have people who return home voluntarily, such as to Iraq. When cities there have been liberated from IS, people also return. And we support these voluntary returnees because we want to give the people there a reasonable chance to start over again.
What if the war in Syria lasts for 20 years? What will we do then? If a family lives here, grew up here, the kids go to school and parents work.
Well, as I said, those who have the full status defined by the Convention on Refugees will, after a certain time, get permanent residency status. With people who are earning a living and supporting themselves, we could review their cases. However, let's hope the Syrian conflict won't last 20 years. But given the situation in Syria, the people who are here at the moment have no reason to fear being sent back.
I have visited many refugee facilities in Germany and spoken with the people in their own language. Many refugees are becoming frustrated. Right now, they feel abandoned. What precisely do you want to do?
It took a long time to process so many applications. That was a problem. But the good news is, we're now down to only 100,000 unprocessed applications, and hundreds of thousands have already been given a decision one way or the other. Many people don't realize refugees first have to take a German course before they can start school or job training. And that takes time. But we do our utmost to get young people into education. And even those without a full residence permit can work or learn a trade. Nevertheless, many see German bureaucracy as being very slow and would like to be able to enter the labor market much faster. But we cannot allow that either, because we cannot allow destructive competition, that perhaps Germans who are seeking employment cannot find certain jobs. We have to keep on finding a balance there. Germany is an orderly country, but that means things may take a little longer, and I can only ask for patience.
I'd like to focus on another group that has been living in Germany for a long time, people of Turkish origin. We keep hearing that many of them still feel the question as to where they actually belong hasn't been answered. Could this perhaps also be due to the fact that your party still doesn't accept that Germany is an immigration country?
We have long since said goodbye to the times when we called these people guest workers. Everyone is able to acquire German citizenship. That means people with Turkish roots can become just as German as those whose families may have lived here for centuries. I always tell people who've been here a long time, but might not have German citizenship, that they have contributed to the prosperity of our country and therefore belong here. If they obey the law, of course. What worries us is the fact that different groups from Turkey are maybe spying on or surveilling each other. We do not want that. We don't want to import any conflicts from Turkey to Germany. We will make sure that all groups can live here peacefully and unharmed.
How exactly do you want to do that? Or make sure that precisely that doesn't happen?
By investigating every case. By really encouraging people who feel they are being watched to inform us, and then taking decisive action against the respective sources or those doing that.
Almost all of your coalition partners want a real immigration law. I'm not talking about the law regulating the immigration of skilled workers, but about a real immigration law. Is that something you are willing to negotiate on?
I believe that our proposed law on skilled workers is exactly what others might describe as an immigration law. We say that our country needs to bring in skilled workers. We have a shortage of specialists, and the European Union's Blue Card scheme offers us very good options for immigration, especially for high earners with academic degrees. We'd like to improve this and extend it to simple occupations. But these need to be linked to the existence of a real job that cannot be filled any other way. And I think that is the right thing to do, because we do not want immigrants to end up in our welfare system.
So it is non-negotiable for you?
The details have to be negotiated. We know, for example, that Canada has long preferred a point-based system, but is now also looking at the question, what jobs do we actually want to fill? It needs to be said that immigration laws are always aimed to serve the needs of the country into which people come. By contrast, asylum law, the Refugee Convention, is a humanitarian obligation that is not tied to a workplace. And these are two separate issues. And that is why we've made our position clear by naming it the law regulating the immigration of skilled workers.
Zuwanderung von Fachkräften, die in Deutschland gesucht werden.
Madam Chancellor, Germany is voting this Sunday. According to current polls, the AfD could become the third strongest party in the Bundestag. Why haven't you been able to prevent this?
I do not wish to speculate about the outcome of the election, as you can understand. But I will call on as many people as possible to support what we in the CDU and CSU are offering with their votes. Our two parties have had certain disagreements, especially about the euro and its stabilization, also on refugee policy. I believe these were fundamental decisions for Europe, for the single currency, and for our humanitarian commitments. They've naturally also provoked discussions throughout society, some of them heated. But I think these decisions were both correct and necessary. And that is why we must try to solve the problems that are connected to it, to earn people's trust and let them know that every vote counts. But in certain situations, fundamental decisions like these have to be made.
DW is Germany's international broadcaster. Many people keep asking us, Germany is so well off. You have good schools, you have decent health care, and a good retirement program. Yet, despite all this, the AfD, this populist right-wing party, is so successful. Can you try to explain this to our international viewers?
Ich möchte das nicht erklären, weil ich auch
I
mit
don't
der
want to
AfD
explain this because I will never work with the AfD. But I just want to say that there are indeed people in Germany who have problems. This does not justify certain political attitudes or exclusion. But we must also work very hard to ensure that we have equal living conditions. We have rural areas where internet access is slow to arrive, in which there is a shortage of doctors. We have people who've worked for many years and still have a very small pension. And that is why, even though our country ranks highly by international standards, here too, many people have to struggle to make ends meet.
Right, another question about the AfD. According to polls, some voters who up to now have voted for the CDU or CSU are migrating to the AfD. Do you have an idea on how to win these voters back?
We are not the only ones affected by this phenomenon. My answer is clear: to solve people's problems. The worries they have, having their own jobs, as well as decent schools and doctors, to really take care of these issues. But on the other hand, to signal a clear stop to hatred and violence.
Ms. Merkel, thank you very much. To finish, we always like to ask the same question. Imagine you had to spend 1 month on a desert island and could only survive if you took one of these people with you, one of the other party lead candidates.
And you need to choose one of these people or you won't survive.
I take Joachim Herrmann, CDU and CSU.
For our international audience, Joachim Herrmann is the partner to Chancellor Merkel's CDU. What would you discuss with him on the desert island?
I would discuss with him how we can improve internal security in Germany. And perhaps he would ask me a few policy issues that he hasn't dealt with yet.
Super. Thank you very much, Ms. Merkel.
You're welcome.
We always finish with a quick selfie. Would you?
Sure.
Could you pass me the mobile phone, please?
Dankeschön. Macht das
Selfie, wenn das in Ordnung ist.
This is the town of Bitterfeld in eastern Germany. Annette Germann, the woman with the red ponytail, considers Merkel an enemy. She wants to throw her out of office.
She's done nothing for Germans, just foreigners.
Bitterfeld is a stronghold of the right-wing populist AfD party. Many local residents don't like the Chancellor or her government, and they make that clear when she arrives for her speech.
Many refugees came to Germany in 2015. There was a humanitarian emergency. I would like to thank all the local politicians, the volunteers, the churches and NGOs and associations for all they did to help people.
The crowd reaction is mixed. Some obviously disagree with the Chancellor. Many of the refugees are following the election campaign closely. Rawat Afshar and his friends arrived from Afghanistan in 2015. They don't understand why the AfD supporters are so upset.
Some of them don't have jobs or money, so they complain about Mrs. Merkel. But that's wrong. In Germany, everyone can work, get training, and find a good job.
The Chancellor makes a low-profile departure. She'd just as soon avoid this crowd. This is the city of Ludwigshafen in southwestern Germany. Some CDU supporters are also opposed to Merkel's refugee policy.
I'm really concerned. I want my country to be safer. I want secure borders. So we know who we're letting in.
A year ago, Merkel's poll numbers were down. Many blamed her for a series of terrorist attacks. But she managed to regain much of her popularity. Still, there are some here who are not pleased with the Chancellor. They're shouting, "Get out," and Merkel must go.
Of course, Islamist terrorism poses a huge challenge. But we can't fight it with shouting or booing. That's for sure. We can only face the challenge by working together and by working with the European Union. Europe is important for our security, both at home and abroad.
Merkel is by no means a nationalist, but she does understand the concepts of German homeland, prosperity, and security. Tarek and Lana Al-Morabet arrived from Syria in 2016, after their homeland, prosperity, and security were destroyed in the civil war there.
Den Menschen im Irak, die heute noch nicht zurück können nach Mosul, den Jesidinnen und Jesiden, die vertrieben wurden.
Vielen Dank, dass Sie heute hier gewesen sind. Alles Gute.
Das ist mein Traum und meine
To see this wonderful woman is like a dream come true for me.
Nur sehen, das ist
I can't describe it.
Ich kann das nicht beschreiben.
After the Chancellor has left the stage, one of her staffers poses for a few selfies. She also plays down the role of the right-wing hecklers.
These people always travel around with the AfD. That is part of our democracy. But it doesn't speak very well for our country. In a democracy, it's important to listen to others. You can be critical, but always treat others with respect.
Nuremberg in southern Germany. The CDU-CSU's pro-business wing is meeting at the convention center. They've been some of Merkel's most outspoken critics in recent years, and they've often contradicted her in public. A year ago, the Chancellor would have felt like she was walking into a lion's den, but the internal party criticism has died down. Here, Merkel focuses on economic successes and the digital future, not refugees.
When I became Chancellor 12 years ago, no one had a smartphone. People used to sign autographs. There were no selfies. Things have changed. At home, when families sit around the table, half of them are looking at their WhatsApp messages under the table. We have to remember to talk to each other and not focus on communicating with someone on the other side of the world.
Angela Merkel has managed to turn her campaign around, and she's done it quietly, too. Even her critics, including Carsten Linnemann, admit that she has changed things for the better.
There is now some consensus. The Chancellor herself says that there can be no repeat of 2015. Everyone has to work towards successful integration because people are coming to us from very different cultures. There's very clear agreement on that.
And then it's on to the next stop. Berlin, the day of the TV debate between the two top candidates for Chancellor. It's the first time that the two candidates are squaring off against each other. The SPD's Martin Schulz is far behind in the polls. The debate could help him to improve his ratings. And the debate is underway. Merkel presents herself as an indispensable crisis manager. But the moderator challenges her on her apparent attempts to try to be all things to all people.
I think that people change in the course of their lives, but the challenges that they face are always new.
Martin Schulz attacked the Chancellor on her refugee policy.
In an interview, Mrs. Merkel said that she would do what she did in 2015 again if she had to. I would not recommend that. We made the mistake of not involving our European partners. We presented them with a done deal. And this means that today the Hungarian and Polish leaders are shirking their responsibilities.
After the debate, Merkel met some of her more enthusiastic supporters. The post-debate polls indicate that most Germans think that Merkel will be re-elected. A lot of voters seem to have calmed down now.